23-year-old Elizabeth McManus and her parents, Rich and Manon McManus, are suing Elizabeth's ex-boyfriend, 25-year-old Gilbert Leal, for a loan to buy a car and unpaid rent. Gilbert is countersuing, claiming Elizabeth destroyed his belongings after they broke up.
All rise. Quiet in the courtroom. Your Honor, this is case number 43 on the calendar in the matter of McManus versus Leal. Parties have been sworn in. You may be seated. Sure, have a seat.
All right, Mr. McManus, it is your claim that the defendant, Mr. Leal, owes you, really you and your wife, for 2 loans that you made to him during the course of his relationship with your daughter.
Correct.
One was for $1,500 towards the purchase of a car for him.
Yes.
The second was $125 that he needed because he was short of rent, and he called you and asked you for the money. Mr. Leal says that you generously agreed to help him buy this car, and it was a gift. The $1,500 was a gift, and as was the $125 that you gave him towards the rent. Mr. Leal is counterclaiming because he says when he attempted to break off the relationship with your lovely daughter, she threw a hissy fit and broke a whole bunch of his property. Yes. Correct, sir? I'm going to start with you. When were you and Elizabeth dating?
January, I believe.
Of what year?
Was it 2003?
Elizabeth, when?
It was in March of 2003.
March.
And there was a time that you lived together. Would you tell me when that was?
After dating there, we actually both moved to Michigan, where I went to school at, and Mr. McManus wasn't too happy there.
All right, this is a whole saga here. When did you live together, Mr. Leal?
But I moved down, and that was in January, I believe.
2004?
Yes.
Now, you didn't have a car.
No.
You were sharing a car with Elizabeth?
Yes.
You wanted your own car, and you approached your parents.
Mm-hmm.
And they agreed to give you how much money?
They gave me about $3,900.
Go ahead.
I found a car that was, well, decently priced for $4,900.
You saw a car for $4,900.
Mm-hmm.
All you had was $3,900.
Mm-hmm. So
what did you do, Gilbert?
I didn't really think twice about it. At the time, I didn't really find anything that was working with $3,900.
Life is very short.
Right.
And I have a lot of work to do.
Right.
So, you have $3,900.
Mm-hmm.
The car you want is $4,900.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do?
Well, we were living together, like you already know. At the time, me and Elizabeth kind of briefly discussed it a little bit, but it still wasn't anything, too serious. So her dad approached me with helping me.
Gilbert, at some point you had to call Mr. McManus and say, I have $3,900. The car I want is $4,900. Can you help me out?
Right.
So, I don't want to put words in your mouth. That's not what I do. How did the McManuses find out that the car you sought exceeded your bank account?
Through Elizabeth.
Did you discuss with your parents the fact that his eyes were bigger than his stomach?
Yes, Your Honor, and there was a...
Just a second.
Okay.
So he told you, and you went to your parents.
Uh-huh. He also spoke to my parents.
Just a second. Who went there first, Elizabeth?
Me. Okay.
And what did you say to mother and or father?
I told them that Gil had backed my car into someone else's car in a Taco Bell parking lot and took off paint that he said he was going to pay for, and that the whole car situation wasn't working out, and he needs a car so he can get to work and I can do my thing. Can you...
That's what you told your parents?
Yes.
Can you what?
Can you help him out by giving him a loan?
Who did you discuss it with, your father or your mother?
My mom.
What did your mother say?
We had offered to loan Gil the money well before he found the car. And then they moved down here. And he found the car, and then Elizabeth called and said, he could really use that help of that loan that you had offered him. Because the car that he wants is $5,000, and his parents was able to give him $3,500. And so we gave Gil a loan for $1,500.
That was in February of 2004?
Yes.
And when did you break up?
March 14th, 2004.
So, a couple of weeks later, right? But there was a second loan. What was the second loan about?
Well, before they moved down, I had told him that if he needed help making the rent, food, whatever, to cover his share, if he were to advise me if he was in any problem, that I would be willing to help. He called me directly on the phone, said he was short of the rent. I knew that she didn't want to hear about that problem because she was struggling to make up her end
So you
of
gave
it.
him $125.
On the condition he'd pay me back when the first time he got paid, which would have been within 10 days, as I remember it. I've never heard from him since.
Now, a couple of weeks later, you decided you wanted out of this relationship. Tell me why.
We had been arguing pretty much when we moved in. It was just tough on us. I wasn't working full time, and she then started talking with her ex-boyfriend and different things like that, and disregarded our relationship altogether. I said it wasn't going to work out, so
Now let's
I
get to your
decided to move.
counterclaim, Gilbert.
Well, counterclaim was that day that I moved out that night. She decided to help me move by breaking my stuff and throwing it at me. On top of that, I had two items that were very close to me and very personal to me that she threw and lost.
Allow me to intervene if I may.
Okay.
If I could be so bold, Judge.
Can't.
Judge Judy continues in a moment. Elizabeth McManus and her parents, Rich and Manon McManus, claim Elizabeth's ex-boyfriend, Gilbert Layell, owes for a loan to buy a car and unpaid rent.
Go ahead.
We did have a big fight. And what he's referring to is that he left the apartment for 2 hours. Didn't tell me where he was going. Nothing. And I ended up locking the doors on him, and I went to bed. And so whenever he came back, he's pounding on the door, and I wasn't going to let him in.
You mean you double locked the door from the inside?
Mm-hmm.
Nasty.
I was trying to do that.
Yeah, take your hands off your hip.
Sorry. Yes, I agree. That was nasty. I was trying to show him that don't just leave me for hours and don't tell me where you go. So what I'm trying to get at is that he came in the house, and it ended up that he said, "I'm sick of this. I'm leaving." And I snapped. Your Honor, I was very upset because we have this agreement to be living together, and he's trying to bail on me. So I said, "I will help you move out." And I took his things, and I went like that. And the rock he was referring to, and an angel that were important to him, the last I ever saw those items were on the bed.
What did you break, Elizabeth?
I don't believe I broke anything.
You were throwing his stuff.
I shoved it off the table. I didn't, throw it as like launching it at him.
You didn't pick up my glasses and throw them at me, crush them and throw them at me?
I tossed things across the room.
Elizabeth, now your brother is dying to say something. Was he there that evening?
He was not there that fight.
Mr. McManus, you want to say anything?
Yeah, briefly.
Well, then stand up.
Stand up by me, honey.
When Gil was moving out the final time, he was fully packed, and at no point did I witness any destructive act.
Well, your sister already has told me that she threw his stuff around, right? So you're not going to say she didn't,
dispute that.
because she couldn't. Good.
But I don't believe that it was a result in any destructiveness, meaning his items at no point, to my observations, were broken as a result of any arguable tantrums.
Good.
May I say something, Your Honor?
Yes.
When Elizabeth and Gil came home, and Elizabeth found out about the $125, what came out was, Mom, he wasn't short $125. He's still short $200 for the rent. I have a hole in my wall. I have a hole in my door because he's gotten upset and he's creating damage. And I said to Elizabeth at that time, he can't stay. I don't mind supporting you. You're my daughter. I'm not going to support your boyfriend.
I got it. I got it. One of the problems is your husband, behind his daughter's back, had a conversation with Gilbert. He was well-meaning, but he said to Gilbert, look, so you're going to be short. If you're short, you let me know because I'll help you out. I can understand why Elizabeth was annoyed because he's supposed to be taking care of business and he wasn't taking care of business. Right, Elizabeth?
Yes, and...
All right. But I'm going to tell you something that you said to me was really kind of stupid. And that is, if he decided to move out because you weren't getting along, why you lost your temper, I don't know. I would have thrown him a party. Not thrown his things, I would have thrown him a party. And you really had no right to lock him out of the apartment because irrespective of where he got the money, he was paying rent. Now, Gilbert, your parents love you?
Yes.
Is that why they were helping you with your money?
Yes.
Mr. McManus doesn't love you. And the reason he was helping you was because of his daughter, not because of you. He doesn't care whether he doesn't see you starting today until hell freezes over. Now, are you a moral person, Gilbert?
Yes, Your Honor.
Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you.
Thank you. You see, now, if I was superstitious, I would say, when you sneeze after you say something, it's because you're telling the truth. So Mr. McManus really doesn't care whether he sees you from today until hell freezes over.
Elizabeth McManus and her parents, Rich and Manon McManus, claim Elizabeth's ex-boyfriend, Gilbert Layell, owes for a loan to buy a car and unpaid rent.
Are you working now, Gilbert?
Yes, ma'am.
How did you get to work last week?
Another car that I own.
When did you sell the Camaro, Gilbert?
No, I didn't sell the Camaro yet. But
Where
I'm
is
going
it?
to. It's in my possession.
What kind of car did you buy, Gilbert?
Just another commute car, like a little Civic.
Why would you do that, Gilbert?
I planned on selling the Camaro, so I needed something that was a little less. The Camaro was giving me a lot of problems as far as...
Well, I hope that you sell it for at least $1,500, Gilbert.
I hope.
Because you owe the McManuses $1,500. I'm surprised at you, sir. I'm really surprised that you committed yourself to another car that you purchased and paid for while still having the old one and didn't have the good judgment and the moral compass to say, these people were nice to me, and I'm going to see to it that they get their money back. The $125 for rent, sir, that's your problem. Put your hand down. That's your problem. You offered, he accepted, he gave him $125. Don't do it again. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,500, which is the amount of money that you loaned him for the car. Now, as far as your personal property is concerned, Gilbert, you have photographs of the personal property that she destroyed?
No, I don't.
You have bills and receipts for the personal property she destroyed?
No, ma'am.
Well, I can't help you, sir. Thank you. That's all. Counterclaims dismissed.
Thank you.
Parties are excused. You may step out. All parties in the matter of Plaster versus Deal. Step forward, please.
Homemaker Shirley Bonnie Plaster is suing her former friend, 25-year-old homemaker Tamara Deal, for unpaid child care fees. Tamara says Bonnie agreed to take her children so they wouldn't have to live in a gang-infested neighborhood.
Ms. Plaster, it is your claim that the defendant, who has 3 children, owes you for child care. Her children lived with you for a period of time. She gave you some money, but you still claim she owes you $1,500.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Deal says she owes you nothing because of one of 2 things. Either you waived any support during the mediation that you evidently had about something, and second, that there was never any agreement to pay you for taking care of her children. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Why was she taking care of your children?
I had some problems in the neighborhood that I was living in, and it was basically a bad community, and I had to do what was best and get my children out of there as soon as possible.
And how long did they all stay with you?
From June the 11th, Bradley stayed with me until March the 4th, and then the others from August and October until March the 4th.
Where were you living during all of this time?
I recently...
Richard, don't look down. Look at me.
I recently moved out of the apartment that I was moving in because of the community, and I went to stay in hotels. That's why I thought it was best that Bonnie helped me out and take care of my kids.
Who were you living in the hotels with?
Me and the father of my children.
You have a drug problem?
No, ma'am.
Did he?
No, ma'am.
So then why weren't you working?
We were working.
Well, 2 people working, it would seem to me you could have some sort of place for your children.
Right. At the time, you know, struggling, trying to keep up the bill of the hotel and the gas to go back and forth to work and the money to eat on, it took us a long time to try to save the money up so that we could get on our feet.
You knew Miss Plaster through your mother, is that right?
Not only through my mother, but she took custody of my cousin when he was about 9 months old.
How old is he now?
16.
So she's a very good parent.
Yes.
What arrangements did you make to pay her for taking care of your children?
I gave her $150 a week, every week.
Is that right?
She was paying me $150, then she fell behind in November and stopped paying me.
How come?
Back in November, I lost my brother. I had to take some leave of absence from work, and when I went to go back to work in December, they asked me not to come back because I had been off work for so long, so I wasn't getting a check every week. And then 2 weeks after that, my grandmother passed away as well.
Now, what about the father of these children?
He was with me.
Why wasn't he giving her any money?
He wasn't bringing home much. You know, $200–300 a week is basically getting us by. I mean, it's $350 for a week of hotel.
It's $350 a week for hotel, madam. You can find a small apartment for less than that.
No, not where we live.
Where do you live?
In Virginia.
Sure you
It's
can.
$1,200 a month for an apartment.
Yeah.
And when you're bringing home $300 a week, that's not making it much. It's
Well,
not
you
gonna
just
make a
told me it
rent
was
payment.
$350 a week for a hotel room.
Yeah, and we were struggling. And that's why I told Mrs. Plaster that when I got my taxes that I would give her some money because I didn't pay her in November when I lost my job.
So how much money did you give her?
$1,000.
And how much money do you owe her?
Nothing. After I gave her the $1,000, nothing was said until I was served with a court paper.
Ms. Plaster, I'll hear you.
She paid me $1,000 February the 12th, and I watched the kids from February the 12th to March the 4th when they took them out of there. She owed me $2,000 on February the 12th. She gave me $1,000.
So she owes you $1,600.
Right. But I rounded off to make it just even $1,500.
She said in November, I assume when you stopped working, you got behind.
Correct.
And you were behind $2,000. You gave her $1,000 at that time in February.
That's not right. I mean, a month, that's $600. Okay, that's what I, you know, if I owe her anything, that's what I should have been owing her. But I gave her the $1,000 in February because I didn't give her any money for December.
When you gave her the
end of November.
$1,000 in February, did you take your children home?
No, I took them home
Just a
in
second.
March.
So they stayed with her for another month, another 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Are they with you now?
Yes, they are.
Who else do you live with?
The father of my kids.
You have 3 children with this man. Is there any reason why you're not married to him?
The time isn't right. I mean...
Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,500. That's all. Thank you.
Excuse, Mr.